live and online. It's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever, refreshed from summer vacation. It is Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube. Poll question to start the show. What is brighter? This gorgeous Cha-Cha Real Smooth poster behind me. I can't even place my thumb properly by it. Or Joe's shirt, rocking the Fun Run in color. And you know what I love about that shirt? Just that I noticed it as soon as you mentioned it. The font, at least on Fun Run, I swear is the IMDb font.
It is.
It is the IMDb font. I'm good with fonts. I am very good with fonts, and I was like, "That's the IMDb font."
Yeah, honestly,
well, Steve, if you were good with fonts, you know they'd be called typefaces.
Oh my god! The reason why, because so this is a run that the Wien Park District puts on, and we had different colors for the volunteers and workers to wear during the race. There was blue, green, and I think orange was the other one. And I saw this yellow one. I saw the black font. I'm like, that's the IMDb shirt.
That's all well and good, and that's a good cause and everything. But what about Hershey's Cookie Layer Crunch right here?
And then Dom, blue polo.
Yeah.
You know, try being a shill for Hershey's, or I don't know if they're owned by somebody. Are they Nabisco? I don't even know. I think they might just be Hershey's.
Hershey's is a crazy dynasty in Philadelphia, I think, or Pennsylvania, where they have like a whole factory. It's like the Hershey's family still owns. It's like a whole thing.
House of Hershey.
Yeah, pretty. Honestly, yes. No joke. Yes, that and the Mars Company as well. That does a lot of candy. It's like you could honestly do like a House of Gucci type documentary on it.
Well, hopefully the Flaming Hot Cheetos movie is good and does well, so then we can start getting like candy origin stories and stuff. Because that's like
Cheetos.
You know, there's a lot of I think there's a lot of interesting like candy company stories out there. There's several books on them.
Reese's, I think, is one of them, from what I remember. Like
Reese's,
yeah.
Nestle.
We need a documentary. You know, it was an underrated thing growing up. You guys remember wax bottles, Nickel Nips wax bottles?
I do not.
They were. See, nobody fucking remembers these. I just wasted our 1/2 of them. Nobody remembers these things. My father's liquor store carried them, so maybe that's why I remember them. But they were like wax bottles with liquid inside them. Like, think of like freeze pops, you know, before you freeze them, that liquid inside. That's basically what they were.
I remember seeing these. I just looked them up. Yes.
You bit them off and you drank the liquid, and then you could chew the wax and stuff, which is really good for your teeth. But those things were awesome, man. I like those. I'm like, nobody remembers them, too. I even like those stupid... You remember dots? Not the ones that rip your teeth out, not the gummy ones. The actual literal dots that came on wax paper that you had to rip off and eat.
Yes, I do remember what you're talking about those, yeah. I'm not a candy guy. I'm more of a chocolate guy than anything.
Yeah, I don't eat much candy anymore myself.
But I do know what you're talking about.
I also went through that phase. I used to be addicted to gummy worms and gummy bears, and then just one day I was eating them while watching a movie, oddly enough, and I just went,
sure,
this ain't fucking worth it anymore. I just like gave it to some kid in the audience.
I swear.
It's true. No, it's true. I can't think of the last time I ever bought candy at a movie theater.
Mike and Ike's are the only thing that get by me now. Other than that, it's chocolate. But Mike and Ike's will be the only like sugar like type candy like that I eat anymore.
Smarties? That's about all I can think of.
Smarties ain't bad
for me.
Well, a hot take incoming. Mike and Ike's might be the only movie theater candy I think that you could eat a whole box of and not be sickened by.
Yes.
That, like, I like snow caps. I'm one of those weird... Snow caps have terrible PR. I'm one of those people that really like snow caps.
They're the reason why they exist at AMC still.
But snow caps are like... They get sickening after a little bit, too.
Yeah.
The other ones
what did they sell at the family video?
Snow caps, I know they did.
Yeah, I think
Mike
so.
and Ike's, lemon heads. Lemon heads suck. I never... Those things are... I'd rather drink Pledge. I'd rather drink Pledge than eat lemon heads. And then the other one I like, and this is like dollar store candy too. Do you guys remember Blue Sharks? The gummies.
Yeah.
The shark that were white and blue. They had white stomachs and blue tops. Look them up, Dom. You'll recognize them. They're a dollar store staple. I love those things.
Yeah. Okay, sure. I don't think I've ever tried one.
The first time I ever had one of those, we were at the aquarium in Chicago, and I spent like $5 for one. And then like my mom walks over. She's like, "What'd you do with your money?" I'm like, "I bought these." She's like, "Joey, they sell these at the store for $1." I'm like, Well, why don't we go get more?
Trip on the way home.
I could be investing in so much more.
Oh, I love this candy sidebar. This could be a total segment.
Unfortunately, we actually have good stuff to talk about today.
Yeah, we do. We have outside of the first topic, we do have a handful of things to discuss. There really isn't. This was a good time to take a vacation because outside of Joe, neither Dom nor I think really give a damn about Thor: Love and Thunder. And that's the only thing that's making money now. Somebody texted me, and I felt terrible, but somebody texted me. They're like, "Did you see Mr. Malcolm's List?" And I was like, "No, I avoided that like the plague." That thing looked like a boring time at the movies. That other new movie that came out this week. I'm like, it's fine if you like it and everything. I usually bored to tears by movies like that, like Downton Abbey and Mr. Malcolm's List,
sure.
Love and Friendship. I'm the worst English major. I can't stand that stuff. Like that stuff, that flowery, like
Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah, I never. Emma's another one. I like the book Emma, but man, I'm like, that's a bad day at the theater for me going to see that crap. But like, I'd rather go see sophisticated cinema like Firestarter.
What was your what was your opinion on The Favorite?
Oh, I like The Favorite.
Okay.
And I even mentioned in the paragraph of my review too, I said like I normally next to fantasy period pieces just don't do it for me.
I remember when we talked about The Northman, you said that as well.
Yeah, no, but I really liked The Favorite. That was a good one. I didn't love it, but I really got into it.
Same.
I did love that, and I think it's a testament to Yorgos Lanthimos on that one. But since there's really nothing really new out, even this week, I think it's only that Where the Crawdads Sing movie this week. But and that Blazing Saddles animated movie too. But The Bad Guys, we're going to review that. That's on Peacock. I did not get a chance to watch it again, but I did see it in theaters, and it was in theaters, like, I swear to God, 10 days ago, so my mind's pretty ripe with it. And then we were also talking about a mutual friend of ours, at least 2/3 of ours, and her very big accomplishment in releasing an album. We don't talk music very much on this show, but when a friend of ours who's instrumental in the creation of this show, whether she knows it or not, or instrumental in my friendship with one Dominic Guanzon, we want to give her flowers because this is a very good album. And I want people to check it out. She busts her ass with music. So and she's done a great job. Came a long way, even from when we knew her. Dom knew her. Dom, you knew her beforehand. So we'll touch on that too, as well to end the show. But first, we have to open in memoriam. I got 5 texts from people when this happened last Thursday. You thought he was my uncle. You thought he was my uncle, man. And I don't mind. I got 5 different texts, one of which was from my boss. I heard it first from my boss, actually. But James Caan passed away last week. I think a week ago today, July 6th. Yeah, July 6th, and I think it was announced on Thursday. He passed away at the age of 82 in Los Angeles, California. Leaves behind a treasure trove of really good movies. And, of course, the first thing I think of when I think of James Caan, I think of his very brief blink-and-you-miss-it appearance in the direct-to-video movie Santa's Sleigh, the horror movie. I think of him in that movie. I actually sent that clip around to some people because he's in it along with Fran Drescher. It's the opening scene when this whole family gets killed by Bill Goldberg as Santa Claus. It's James Caan, Chris Kattan, Fran Drescher, and Rebecca Gayheart. And the inner joke of that scene, that opening scene to that movie, all 4 of those actors are Jewish. That's the inside joke of all of that scene. But who am I kidding? James Caan, obviously best remembered for The Godfather, Sonny Corleone, and Godfather, and Godfather Part 2 pretty briefly as well. But he was in a ton of stuff. This was a guy who worked in Hollywood through multiple generations, multiple decades, from 1961 to really the end, 2022. So he saw the real changes in Hollywood and beyond movies. One really good show, and I don't watch a lot of TV, as you guys know. One really good show. Have you guys ever seen the show Las Vegas?
No.
He was in that. Tom Selleck was in that show.
When did that air?
2003.
I think I actually did, like,
It's on NBC.
not like concertedly watching it, but I remember it, my dad watching it. Yeah.
He was the casino manager on that show. That's a great show. That's a show your dad probably watched. Because my dad loves it.
Yeah.
My dad loves it. I've seen a lot of it. That's a great show. And he was a real big reason why that show was so good. Josh Duhamel is the other actor in that. He's like the understudy of the casino that James Caan takes under his wing. But he leaves behind a ton of great movies. Another movie I really like by James Caan too, Rollerball, made by Norman Jewison, who is still alive to this day. Norman Jewison, who directed Fiddler on the Roof, Jesus Christ Superstar, 95 years old. I don't think a lot of people know that he's still alive too. But James Caan was in that one along with John Houseman and a lot of others in Rollerball. I've always liked that one. And then modern, Elf. He was in Elf as well. So, I mean, he leaves behind so many big roles and stuff. And I'll throw it over to Dom because I love the Godfather movies. Dom might love them even more. And I want to throw it over to Dom, too, remembering James Caan here.
Yeah, I might actually even agree with you just because it's become kind of a Father's Day tradition for my dad and I to watch The Godfather. We just I don't know why we just love that movie so much, and a lot of men. That's like a manly man's movie. It's like a rite of passage for some people, at least in the previous generation, to watch The Godfather, especially if you're Italian, especially if you like crime movies. Honestly, it covers a whole bunch. But if you know James Caan, you mainly know him through three things. First and foremost, of course, Godfather. Second, if you like historical war epics, then you probably know him from A Bridge Too Far, which is just jam-packed. He's like a lesser on the screen time, but he's because it's so jam-packed with names and faces. But you might know him from there. But three, if you're about our age and you're not into crime or The Godfather, if you don't really know what that is, then you probably know him through Elf and watching him. In the Christmas classic, he is the father to oh my God, Will Ferrell,
Yes.
In that movie,
Buddy.
Which a lot of people don't even recognize him as just because he's so old and just playing just a regular guy. But that's mainly, I mean, obviously, again, performing since the '60s, he is a true actor, true artist, and he's just been a working class actor ever since. But it's so amazing just to read his filmography. A lot of it you don't even realize, but it's really cool to see. He personifies the archetype of the hothead in pretty much anything. For a lot of people, if you, particularly in crime stories, if you watch any of them and if you see any hothead in any of them, you're just probably going to instantly think of Sonny Corleone, specifically James Caan as Sonny Corleone, as opposed to his, I guess, novel counterpart. But yeah, dude, I never watched Thief. Apparently, that's okay. Wow, that's a poster, but
It's a cool poster.
It is, at least the one on Wikipedia.
That's a Michael Mann movie. I actually have on my list of things to do this year is watch all Michael Mann movies because Thief is like a big blind spot for me too. Willie Nelson's in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude. But James Caan, even though he's only in the first movie, in the second movie, he's actually considered a cameo because he literally only shows up because he's spoilers. He's dead by the second movie, and he literally only shows up in the last 5 minutes in that last scene. It is considered a cameo, I believe. But really, he's only in one movie, but his death affects everything else that happens after that, and affects how Michael Corleone behaves and acts. And it's so cool to see to see that his career, James Caan's career, is getting a little more exposure these days, and hopefully more people can recognize that, and including me. I really didn't know much about him at all, other than those three movies that I talked about. So hopefully he can get some more exposure there. But at least in his memory. But a real working class actor, James Caan, 82 years old. Honestly, it felt like he's been working for so long. It feels like he might even be older. But a real manly man all the way through.
What say you, Joe?
Yeah, for me, I mean, if you want to list some movies that I remember him and made notable impressions on me. One of my favorites that he was in is a Stephen King adaptation, Misery, where he plays the writer that's being held hostage and everything. And I love both of the performances in this movie. I think both are very good. And to me, that's one of my favorite Stephen King adaptations. Another one, and if you're from Chicago, you're probably familiar with this movie. I think it was a direct, to TV movie or maybe direct to video. But we watched it in middle school in our gym class when we had a rainy day, and I was like, "This is such a damn good movie." Brian's song, and where he played one of the football players on the Chicago Bears that was diagnosed with cancer, and then finally, I mean, one of the ones that of course, Godfather comes to mind. That's where I first saw probably James Caan, but another one that I just love so much, and it's one of his last few roles he did. But Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. It's Tom Lockwood, Flint Lockwood's dad in the movie, who is very afraid of technology and just reminds me of any older parent that is afraid of any technology. And James Caan just voiced him beautifully. And yeah, I mean, the guy, like you guys all said, I mean, Elf as well for me too. He's been across so many generations of Hollywood, and he's played so many different characters. It's just like this dude. He is so cool. I mean, I read the Playboy interview that he did like a long time ago after The Godfather came out about like how like all these guys used to think he was like some macho big guy that would beat people up. He's like, no, that's some like bullshit. Like, I'm like laid back. I like to drink wine and all this other stuff. I like to listen to like music and go see the opera. He's like,
he seemed pretty private and pretty quiet.
Yeah. And like he like ended up going off on the Playboy interviewer because of like all like just the random stuff that he was just bringing up that like had no basis to it whatsoever.
Just going after him like Carlo, just beating him up in the street.
Yeah, with the baseball bat and everything. Yeah, I mean, it was sad seeing that happen. This year a lot of mobster actors have passed, like just out of nowhere. We had Ray Liotta recently too.
Yeah. God protect Joe Pesci at all costs.
Yeah, or De Niro, like for real. You forget how old some of these guys are because of how many times you've seen them in movies. You just think, oh, they're in movies, they're doing fine, and then you look at their age and you're just like, oh shit, all right, like.
And I think it's an effect, not to cut you off, but I also think it's an effect too with like these movies that air on cable all the time, like Godfather and like Goodfellas and Casino. Is like you feel like these guys are like, and I know De Niro's of all of them the more ubiquitous one. So De Niro pops up on TV a lot, so you know what he looks like now. But like Pesci quit acting a long time ago and stuff, and it wasn't until like The Irishman where you're like, oh my God, he got old, because like these actors stay like eternally youthful on the screen, especially when these movies you could find Goodfellas on TV at any time of the day.
For God's sake, HBO ran Meet the Parents like 24/7 from like 12 a.m. to like 5 a.m.
Yeah. Yeah. The last thing I'll mention with James Caan. No, we'll go into the bad guys. Another great James Caan movie. You might not have seen it, but you probably know of the crappy remake of it, the movie The Gambler from 1974. They remade it about 8 years ago
with Mark Wahlberg. Yeah.
Yes. Which I hadn't thought of until just now. But The Gambler's a really good movie with James Caan. He's an English professor who's a gambling addict, and he's in debt to the mob.
Yeah.
And the poster of it, I always love the poster. I had to pull it up again. The poster is a picture of him in like a casino looking like disheveled. And it says, for $10,000, they break your arms. For $20,000, they break your legs. Axel Frito's $44,000. And it's a great movie. Paul Sorvino's in it. Burt Young is in it. Like, that is one I hadn't thought of it until just perusing his filmography. That is a really good gambling movie, and I'm not a big gambler. I love gambling movies. That's a top 5 gambling movie for me. Is The Gambler with James Caan.
It's a Paramount Pictures movie. I might have to check if it's on Paramount Plus, because I've never actually seen the original. I've only seen the remake.
Yeah, I saw the original before the remake came out, and I was like, God, this is going to suck. I remember thinking, like, the remake going in, I was like, this is going to suck. This movie was great. God forbid they remake Rounders. That's another underrated one. But we'll move forward with the bad guys. Review this one. We were really at a loss. This was like a late game decision what the hell we were going to review today. Because there was nothing out. Like, if we were a good show, we'd review Thor, Love, and Thunder, but I just told you guys no. I have no interest in it. I have no interest whatsoever. I don't think Dom really does either. I'm sure. I'm not saying it's bad. I just don't have any interest in it. But we probably could. We could have touched that. But and not to mention too, we've just been doing a lot of blockbusters recently. The cool thing now is that like theaters are doing as well as they have since the pandemic. We haven't really mentioned. We probably would have talked about that last week. But like 2 weeks ago, it was the first time 4 consecutive movies made over $20 million at the box office.
Yeah.
Top Gun. This is the funny part of this. Top Gun Maverick, Elvis, The Black Phone,
Jurassic World.
and there's Jurassic World. Thank you, Jurassic World. The funniest part, Lightyear didn't even make that. Lightyear did not even make that list in its second week. But no, it's a good time, and there's been a lot of really good movies this year. Last year was a funky year. This year we're getting a lot of good movies, and that's why I thought it was actually, I think Joe suggested it, so I can't take all the credit, but I thought it was wise to double back and touch on one we didn't talk about initially, was The Bad Guys, the animated movie, which I think is actually still in theaters in some places and still making money. But it's on Peacock now.
We have a local theater here in Bloomingdale. Not that I live there before like somebody tries and find me. But it's called The Picture Show. And I was driving by it the other day and I still saw it on the sign. It was like this Minions. Oddly enough, Lightyear got taken out of this theater. This Minions, Thor, Top Gun, Elvis, Jurassic World.
Wow. I tell you, man, what a miscalculation of the year is Lightyear, no question. But The Bad Guys, though, I didn't really know what to think of it going in because I'd never heard of the comic series. It is based off a comic series. And the movie, too, I think is in collaboration with a French studio, too. But it's DreamWorks, and the director's French, Pierre Perifel, which is a butchered American pronunciation, most certainly. But it's based off a comic series by Aaron Blabey, who's Australian. That's what I was thinking of. He's an Australian writer, so it's an Australian comic series. I didn't know what to expect with this thing going into it, and it's DreamWorks. And I remember we commented on the show very offhandedly, but I remember Joe and I mentioned it on the show. I said the only thing that worries me is the animation looks unfinished. Like in the trailer, I said the animation looks weird. Like it doesn't look. It looks like it needed another render.
It reminded me of Into the Spider-Verse's animation from the trailers, where it's like, this looks unique and cool, but why does it look like it's not finished yet? But then once you actually, and I'm going to jump the gun here, but once you actually see the movie, you're like, oh, it's the style. Duh, I just been so pounded in the head over Pixar style and everything else that I forgot there's other styles of animation.
It's partly that, but it's also the fact too that like when I watched this, I didn't think of it once. I'm like, this movie looks cool.
Yeah.
Where so many animated movies, I guess we'll start here. Where so many animated movies strive for this like glossy CGI sheen. Perifel, the director here, and the legion of animators too. This kind of looks like, this sounds patronizing, but it has like the Saturday morning cartoon feel, but it also has like this 70s noir vibe.
Yeah.
That's really interesting too. Really because like the sunlight is very overexposed like it is right now in my apartment at the moment because of my cat. And the character designs and like the motivations of the characters, it all kind of goes back to like this film noir style that really plays into this thing super well. And I was really won over in the beginning. The subtle homage to Reservoir Dogs in the beginning, with Wolf and Snake talking in the diner. Wolf voiced by Sam Rockwell, who I think does a great. All the voice actors here do a good job, but I think Sam Rockwell was great.
100%.
Particularly Mark Maron as Mr. Snake. They're talking in this diner, and it's such an elaborate bait and switch because it's focused on them for so long, and it isn't until they get up to leave that the camera pans, and everybody in the diner is like huddled in fear in the corner. I love the opening scene of this thing, and it feels like a creative revelation. And I mentioned earlier in my review at stevepulaski.com, I mentioned in my review that it might be one of the only animated films this year worth seeing too, given the crop that's out, at least coming to theaters. With all that rambling aside, I'll throw it over to you, Joe. What say you about The Bad Guys?
Yeah, man. I mean, talking about animation movies in general. Hold on a minute here. Got a bit of an issue with our... Okay, there we go. We're back. Sorry. Yeah, we disappeared on the stream for some reason nice. When I switched over to me. But yeah, talk about animation films in general. Yeah, this year, I mean, I completely agree with Steve. I haven't seen Lightyear yet, so I won't make any comments on that. But what I have heard, like, it's been mixed. But I can care less about the Minions. Paws of Fury. I mean, Mel Brooks is in it, and that's about what it's got going for me right now. I know, Steve, I think you're more interested in it than I am. And that's really just about it. Turning Red was the only thing, but Turning Red was one of Pixar's direct to Disney Plus things, which I was like, man, if this was released in the theaters, this would have been great for Pixar.
Oh, AKA the Pixar movie this year that
That
should
should
have
have went to theaters, honestly, yeah.
And then there was Apollo 10.5, but that's not theaters
Netflix,
either.
yeah. So I was like, man, like theatrical releases this year for animated films. I know we have one at the end of the year for Thanksgiving with Strange World with Disney, but we'll see how that goes too. Animation wise, I was like, damn, like there's really nothing, because I was really banking on Spider-Verse, and then Spider-Verse got pushed back. And this just slipped on by. I remember I saw Steve's review of it, and then just word of mouth about this movie kept going around, like, man, have you seen this movie? Like, I heard people saying it's good, but like what really sells it is the animation. And finally now, like, it's on Peacock, and even if you don't pay for the subscription service on Peacock, like $5-10 a month, whatever it may be, it is free with Peacock. I highly suggest checking this movie out just solely on the animation alone, because yeah, the animation in this movie is really cool looking. That's the best way to honestly describe it, is it's cool looking. The way the characters' eyes look, their mouths, their eyebrows, how it all just like kind of moves, the way that they play around with that in terms of like, you know, facial expressions, as well as like the characters themselves, like the big bad wolf, the snake, everybody. I'm like, they found like really cool ways to animate their facial features, the way they move. And like, yeah, the backgrounds of this movie too, like Steve was saying, I mean, like they use like this bright light constantly, like for some backgrounds, and it does make it look like this kind of like heist movie like feel, like the Ocean's 11 movie has. And I was just like, man, I'm like, this visually kicks so much ass. This is so cool to look at. I loved all the characters' designs. I loved the way they, like, you know, they moved the animated, like, it looked so unique. And like, to me, it's like, damn it, Universal, why can't you give DreamWorks the same amount of love you give Illumination? Because I really wish this got marketed better, instead of like the Minions being marketed all the way back out in like 2021. And in this, like, I only saw trailers when I went to the theater. I never saw any billboards, commercial ads. And while this movie was like, you know, about to come out, I saw more Minions The Rise of Gru ads and everything. Again, haven't seen Minions Rise of Gru, can't speak on it. I'm just speaking of the past movies of that franchise, and I could care less.
You know what I say about the Minions, though? I used to like Despicable Me, but then I grew up.
Basically, I just really wish this movie got marketed better by DreamWorks, and I wish DreamWorks really, I mean, not by DreamWorks, by Universal, and I wish Universal really cared about DreamWorks still, because to me, that was the animated studio that put them really on the map with Shrek and How to Train Your Dragon. And it seems like, you know, just because like now these little yellow nutsacks ran around and screamed and yelled and like talked about bananas, they just forgot about them. Dom, what say
Simpsons
you,
penises.
There we go.
Dom, what say you?
In the pantheon of the gentleman thief archetype, there are some great stories and even franchises out there, including the Ocean series, the Sly Cooper video game series on PlayStation.
Yes! Dude, there was a game that was
Cooper.
reminding me of this, and that was totally it.
Sly Cooper is probably the closest that you can take one-to-one. But for me, I think the biggest influence here, which I guess is confirmed on Wikipedia, which I need to explore the sources on, but Lupin the Third is my... I love Lupin the Third. That's like one of my favorite franchises of all time, which goes all the way back to the 60s and was built, out of this, I think 60s or 70s. I forget exactly. But that is a fantastic franchise with for a franchise that's been running since the 70s, many low points as well. But, unforgettable characters and archetypes and a kick-ass soundtrack. They've been using that same theme since the 70s, and it does not get old for me. Holy shit. But so much of that I see in The Bad Guys, which immediately biased me in the best way possible, because hell yeah, this movie is awesome. One of the, I might even say the best animated film of 2022 so far, I think. As someone who really liked Turning Red, this beats Turning Red for me. Maybe not so much in its message. That's more of an original message, but just in terms of how the execution of this film and how cool it is, and the animation in it, which Joe wonderfully touched on. It's definitely up there for so far, and I don't know what's going to be. I haven't seen Minions yet, but so final judgment, I'll have to wait. But At least according to Wikipedia, the second highest grossing animated film of the year. So that's actually good. This is not a bomb.
I knew it was making huge money. I knew that's for sure. And I'm not mad at the idea that we could get a sequel either.
I remember like when it came out at the perfect time. There wasn't a Marvel movie coming out. There wasn't another animated movie coming out for a long time. It came out like during this low period. And I remember like it made like 50 million opening, and then just like each week it was just keeping on raking in, and then like eventually the big releases came out and it left most theaters, but I mean it's still in some of them and still making a ton of money, and Peacock is just taking advantage of it.
Yeah, and why not too? I mean, like I said, it's been a runaway success. I would still say, I would put Apollo 10.5 above it. Yeah, I would personally.
Oh, okay, sure.
But no, as far as like, because that's not explicitly a kid movie. It can be, I guess, for children, like direct, like straight line children's entertainment, like animated entertainment this year. I think The Bad Guys takes it. The one thing
almost straddles because it's rotoscope. It does, almost straddles the line.
It does, doesn't it? Like it's tough.
I'll concede it's animation. Yeah. Anyway.
Oh, it is animation. It's rotoscope animation. You Philistine. Yeah. But I will say, is before we go to break, the voice acting here is friggin' spectacular.
Yeah.
They have a lot of different voices here. Mr. Wolf is Sam Rockwell, as I mentioned. Mr. Snake is Mark Maron. Mr. Piranha is Anthony Ramos from In the Heights. And I didn't realize that till the credits rolled. That was a nice surprise.
I was really afraid that was going to be
Michael Pena.
What's his name? Say again?
Michael Pena?
No, not Michael Pena. Jeez Louise. The bunny from Pets. No, I'm completely
Kevin Hart.
Yes, I was really afraid it was going to be Kevin Hart and a Kevin Hart style character, but thankfully it actually fleshed out to be.
No, he actually became pretty good. Mr. Shark is Craig Robinson from Hot Tub Time Machine, among others. Aquafina is Ms. Tarantula. Zazie Beetz is the governor. And then one of my favorite guys who doesn't do a lot, but I love him as a voice actor. I love him as a screen presence. Is Richard Ayoade, who plays Marmalade. Richard Ayoade was he's most probably best known in America, even though I feel like nobody saw this movie, that Ben Stiller neighborhood watch movie. The Watch. But he's most famous for the
IT crowd.
The IT crowd.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember what country that was. Was that Ireland?
I think
was that Ireland?
That was British.
That was going to be BBC.
Was that British? That was British. Yeah. It's been over a decade since I've seen. I love that show. Richard Ayoade was a big part of that. He plays Marmalade though, and he's got just like instantly recognizable cadence. He's got a really unique voice on top of a last name that I really had to like flesh out to figure out how to say years ago. Ayoade. Even he jokes. Even he says it's just too many vowels. He's like if you count Y, there's only one consonant. But it's a tremendous voice cast too. Awkwafina, and I like Awkwafina a lot too. Awkwafina really gets into like Miss Tarantula as a character, and it really shows too that like all these characters, like they're the actual characters themselves, they all have a purpose. Like they all have like this own like unique qualities to them. Like Mr. Wolf has just this really like cocky gravitas and eloquence about him.
He's George Clooney.
Yeah, essentially.
They literally mentioned that explicitly.
Mm-hmm. Miss Tarantula can use all like 8 legs to like work multiple different keyboards, which comes in a really cool hacking scene. Mr. Piranha is very explosive. And even though he's got that like one gag that I got nervous about when they introduced it, that like he can't stop farting, I was like, oh Jesus, this is where it's gonna start to lose me. But like, it's actually pretty effective the way they incorporate it. It's as good as they could have, and it doesn't come off. They don't overuse it either, which I think is a big plus.
Multiple parts of the movie where I was like, oh no, where it's like, oh, they're gonna start singing. Oh, okay. Right, fart joke. Oh, okay. Just stuff like that. And there is one thing that it wound up being like, okay, sure, we should get into critiques later. But I do want to say that real quick, that there are many reasons as to why this movie hit for me, but I think one understated thing is its director, which you mentioned earlier, but I want to understate that he is kind of much in the way that Extraction, if you remember that movie from 2020, Chris Hemsworth very a forgettable movie, but you'll remember it for its stunt work because it was directed by a stunt man.
Yeah.
Directed by a stunt person.
I know what you're about to say about this, yeah.
And this movie, directed by an animator.
Yeah.
Has not directed anything else, but has been in the game for so long and knows how to, an animator's animator. He knows how all that works. And henceforth, that's why it makes sense that, the animation of this movie kicks ass.
And he's been the lead animator, because I wanted to see who directed this. So I was like, oh, I wonder, and yeah, I saw it. This is the only directing credit. He's been the lead animator of Kung Fu Panda, which, you can say whatever you want about those movies. I love that first one. Never saw the sequels, even though I love the first one. But that first one, I love the animation style they use there, and all the homages they have to Kung Fu films and all that stuff. And even the trailers I saw with the sequels and everything, I was like, damn, these movies look great. So just again, to Dom's point, when we get movies like Extraction and John Wick, the reason why action movies like that are so great and they capture general audiences and they end up loving them is they're made by a person that knows the craft, because they are the craft.
And if it wasn't such a ass backward way in America, where I always go back to you want to know why the education system in this country is so rotten is the members of the Board of Education never taught a student in their life. It's the same kind of thing. You see this with action movies and animated movies, where that they bring in a hired gun or somebody I don't want to call anybody out, but if you know the names, the directors that you constantly see that seem to just do anything, when you bring in somebody that actually has, actual experience, and Parafo's worked on a lot. Curious George, The Illusionist, which I remember fondly. That came out about 12 years ago. Rise of the Guardians, he was a supervising animator on. He's done a lot, and he's done a lot for a lot of different companies and a lot of different styles. So I don't disagree with that he is a lion's way to the success of this movie, visually and just thematically too.
And that's why, I know we got 90 seconds, but that's honestly why I was really safe in saying, this is heavily influenced by Lupin the Third, because Miyazaki worked on that. That was his first work. His first movie, feature film, was Lupin the Third, Castle. I always mess that name up, but it's a landmark movie. It's on HBO Max. I think we should, if we have a slow weekend, I'd say we should review that.
I'd be down.
It's influenced a lot, including Brad Bird. Not a great name to mention right now, but it's influenced a lot of people, and very much clearly, according to even Wikipedia, the bad guys.
We will be back in about 60 seconds after our Zoom-sponsored intermission. Don't go anywhere, because we've got a really good debut album to talk about in just a few minutes, as well as finish talking about the bad guys. And there's one major thing this movie does well that I cannot give it enough credit for. We'll be back in a few. Sleepless with Steve. We are back. Sleepless with Steve live on YouTube on this Wednesday evening. Before we go any further, Dominic, before we get in trouble for some, what is that? Is that defamation? Yeah, it's defamation of character. Very general defamation of character, but defamation of character no less. You owe a very prominent director an apology now.
So I may have confused Brad Bird with John Lasseter in terms of the controversies. I didn't say anything explicitly, but I was thinking it. Steve actually said off air. He was like, "Oh yeah, I know he directed Tomorrowland, so whatever." I actually kind of like that movie. It's got a lot of issues, but I kind of liked it.
He hasn't really done even. I mean, he directed Incredibles too, but he hasn't done anything really since. Like Tomorrowland was kind of like, I think they put him in like punishment for like a year when they were like, okay, this bomb, this is what we get for giving you 9 figures, jag off, but stick to animation. Now, Tomorrowland wasn't horrible. I kind of confused that with A Wrinkle in Time, though. I kind of get those two mixed up, like those two like bloated random Disney movies that neither of which were particularly great. But anyway, we'll go back to this. I wanted to mention this. I was going to kind of wait for Joe to come back. The other actress or voice actor that I did not mention earlier, Alex Borstein, is a police chief in this movie. Dom, pop quiz. Do you know what Alex Borstein is famous for? The voice that she's famous for.
I know that voice, but I do not.
Lois on Family Guy.
I freaking knew it. I was half thinking something, either her or the Francine from American Dad. I don't know who's that. I don't know. If
I don't know who that is. No,
but I was thinking like it's got to be on like a modern. I knew it wasn't Bob's Burgers, but something like that.
She's Lois.
There's the almost obvious one.
There's certain names that like whenever you hear them, like, excuse me, you just like immediately think of like the character they play. Like Clancy Brown has done a million movies, but I'll always think of him as Mr. Krabs first. Another SpongeBob, Bill Fagerbakke is Patrick. Like, you just certainly have like these actors that just become the character. I remember, was it Nancy Cartwright's the voice of Bart on The Simpsons? I remember Nancy Cartwright said at one point, she goes, sometimes I go to like a carnival or something. She was talking to an interview. She goes, sometimes I just screw with people sometimes. She's like, because a lot of people don't know Bart's voiced by a woman. So she's like, I'll go to the carnival. I'll go to the carnival or something. And she'll just be like, I'll go to like get tickets or something. And I'll say and do it in my Bart voice. And then they'll look at me and I'll just be like, who are you? I'll be like, I'm Bart Simpson. Who the hell are you, man? It throws people off so much. But we'll move forward, though. The one thing I want to mention, too, because this is always a fun thing to mention. The writer of this movie is Ethan Coen. Not the Ethan Coen.
Ethan or Eaton?
I think it's Ethan. I think
I'm just spelled Eaton.
It's Ethan without an H. It's spelled Eaton. I think it's Ethan. Because I swear I watched an interview with him years ago, and they said they introduced him as Ethan. But I hate to say, this is the lesser Ethan Coen. Famous for such movies as Get Hard and Holmes and Watson, 2 of Will Ferrell's worst ever movies. So I remember when this was coming out, and I did a little more research into it, and I was like, oh, Ethan Coen wrote this thing. I'm like, no disrespect inherently, but I'm like, this guy has not had the most glowing filmography, and he's I think still a relatively decently young guy. The other thing he did write too, he wrote Idiocracy, actually. He wrote Idiocracy.
He's like a kind of a mixed bag where it's like Idiocracy, Tropic Thunder, Madagascar, Escape to Africa, and it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, he's
started off strong.
He's an interesting character, that Ethan Coen. Not Joel's brother, but the other Ethan Coen. Who
it's funny that there is a Joel Coen, but who wrote Garfield, the Garfield movie, and it's the famous slip up where Bill Murray thought it was the
Coen brothers,
the more accomplished Joel Coen. So you actually, that's funny that there is another Joel and Ethan Coen.
They need to team up and make a movie and confuse the living hell out of it. A Coen picture. Just call it because they're not brothers, but a Coen movie.
Could you imagine like that? Just try like the biggest prank ever. Just try and rope in as many actors. See how many of them have agents that they actually.
I just watched it yesterday too for reasons I cannot adequately articulate, but like the two need to collaborate and make like the next disaster movie, epic movie.
Oh, for real.
I saw that on Letterboxd. I was like, what the fuck is Steve doing?
I have my reasons. But I bring up Ethan Coen with the bad guys. We'll get back on topic here. The thing with I bring him up though because his script does something, and I didn't really realize it until I sat down to write the review. He does something that's very difficult here, and it's subtle. And the movie's good, so you might like take it for granted. He takes a bunch of characters, the main criminals, who are supposed to be inherently unlikable and dastardly and devious and just very like not good people in society. But he doesn't make them irredeemably ugly. And he doesn't make it so it's like really a sour experience spending time with them for an hour and a half. He makes these characters, he draws these characters figuratively very well. And there's like this likable rapport, and it's almost like a push-pull where it's like you want them to get away with the heist, but you don't because that's, against the very fabric of nature. I just thought that was an interesting little thing that he did that worked really well in this movie's favor.
It's a hard thing to balance when you're writing the gentleman thief kind of thing, and he really tapped to the heart of that, which everything else did, including the voice. Dude, Sam Rockwell is just turning it up on the I was like, damn, Sam, you're really going for it here. You're making me all hot and bothered in my computer chair. But
Rockwell's so good here. I can't overstate that. He's so I like Rockwell in general, but he really makes that Mr. Wolf character, and that's why I think there probably will be a sequel to this. I hope they get everybody back. I hope they don't get they don't lose a single voice, because everybody here is just so good and works off of one another. The vocal dynamics are good. Everybody's distinctive. Everybody sounds distinctive, and everybody gets their moment. And I always like when that happens, and it's especially rare too when a movie's this crowded.
I do wish, if there's anything here I can kind of critique, it would be I kind of wish they had leaned away from the kind of supervillain kind of a
plotline,
nemesis or like supervillain kind of thing, which, to be fair, that's like all the things I mentioned before, except maybe Oceans, but like Sly Cooper, like all the bad guys there are like straight up supervillains with like world-ending devices or whatever. Lupin the Third does it almost like every other movie they make there. It's like a straight up supervillain.
No, but I mean, you bring up a fair point, because as somebody who knows the Sly Cooper games and the Lupin films, I mean, like, this would have just made the bad guy stick out even more. It's like, wow, they didn't do that trope that all those other ones do all the time.
Yeah, exactly. I wish they had actually made it a little more grounded for what you have comparatively, and almost lean into, maybe not inherently make all of these characters way worse, but leaning into the message, because there's actually a really good message here, which is stereotypes. We're just like, we are the bad guys. We are the bad guys in every story, and we are all these animals, specifically shark, piranha, snake, spider, wolf.
It's funny. I noticed too, like not all of them, like in every story, but like those like whenever we have a villain animal in a movie, it's those animals all the time. A wolf. Yeah. Like giant spiders, snakes, anaconda, jaws. I mean, like
the animals that we've villainized as humans. Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of like, I don't want to go this far in my comparison, but it's kind of like Zootopia light in that way.
It is, yeah.
Yes,
like it's cut from a very similar cloth. Like Zootopia is one of the best animated movies of the last decade.
Hell yeah,
I agree.
Easily, I think, but. DreamWorks really, to kind of close out with this, DreamWorks needed a big win, and they got it with this, both financially and in terms of quality. They needed a big win. They were kind of like a little lost in like sequels for a while.
Oh yeah.
And they got a lot. I mean, they were like the big studio, especially when it really became noticeable when like Pixar was really at its height. Its creative height. They started doing like a lot of the Madagascar sequels, the Shrek sequels, the Kung Fu Panda in like the early 2010s, and they kind of lost their way a little bit. They made some really forgettable movies like Home and the stupid Boss Baby.
Let me read the last few films. So Bad Guys 2022, Boss Baby Family Business 21, Spirit Untamed, which apparently
sucked.
Okay.
That
sucked. The Croods, A New Age, Trolls World Tour, Abominable, which I heard wasn't that bad.
I liked Abominable.
I heard people like that one. I can't judge it. I didn't see it.
And then How to Train Your Dragon, that trilogy apparently is
that trilogy
great
slaps.
with everyone. Okay. I haven't seen them.
Don't forget about Captain Underpants, which nobody friggin' saw, which I would have really liked a sequel to that thing, too. The first epic movie, 20 years too late. The Captain Underpants movie DreamWorks did was great, too.
Here's honestly the thing with DreamWorks is that they're no Pixar, but their highs and they have more highs than you think.
Yeah.
But it's just muddied by some of the freaking lows, man. And maybe that's marketing's fault. Probably
a lot of their early movies, like I swear to God, I can throw a rock at anybody our age that still fondly talks about like the Prince of Egypt and the Road to El Dorado.
Yeah,
Prince and Road of those are getting their just due because there is a fandom, particularly with Road to El Dorado. There is a fandom that did not let go of those movies.
I love Road to El Dorado.
This is a lot of fiction, a lot of fan fiction for Road to El Dorado, and you can guess from there.
The thing with DreamWorks, and you kind of touched on it a bit there, but yeah, when they have their highs, they tried riding out their highs for way too long, which is what eventually happened with Shrek, where 3 and 4 sucked, and Madagascar, which, to me, it's like, I love the first movie, but then after that, I could care less, and then they tried to make like the Penguin spin-off and everything. They also tap into TV way more than any other animated studio, except for Disney. Let me make that clear. But they tap into a lot of Netflix TV shows and a lot of animated programming on Nickelodeon throughout their whole lifespan. So, like, yeah, whenever DreamWorks has a high, like, yeah, they have more highs than you think, but it's just like they try riding it out and end up burning it and making a new low.
Yeah, that's pretty.
And it's disappointing. It's also just the way of the culture. But you look at what they did initially. Like, I remember, too, and I know it's more popular, I think, in, like, England and such, but, like, I remember really loving as a kid, and I watched it somewhat recently, a few years ago, Wallace and Gromit, when they made the Curse of the Were-Rabbit movie. That was good. They, of course, did Chicken Run. Like, they were dabbling in a lot of that space, too. Another movie of that same breed that I think is underrated, and I love the concept of it. I think it's a pretty good movie. I don't think it's a great movie, but I think it's pretty good. I think the concept's better is Flushed Away. Flushed Away is another one that was like a really cool concept. Like, they had a lot. Growing up, they really had a lot. Even the first Spirit movie is great, and there's barely any dialogue in that movie.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that they got a win with this. And be careful what you wish for. You might get it. But I would like a sequel to this. I truly would.
I would, too.
Providing everybody comes back and Perifel returns as director, I'm game. I'm game for a sequel with this. It's 3.5 out of 4 stars. I'm going that high with this one. It's 3.5 out of 4 stars. I enjoyed the hell out of this movie. It was one of those movies I mentioned in the beginning that I knew I was going to enjoy because of how much I leaned forward during that opening scene. I really got on the movie right after the credits. I got on that movie's wavelength right away, and I wrote it till the end. I loved it. 3.5 out of 4 stars.
3.5 out of 4 stars for me as well. I love Lupin the Third. I love the music of Team Fortress 2, which is pretty much the same thing here, which also takes cues from all the other things I mentioned earlier. I love that aesthetic, that audio, that that oral and that visual aesthetic, and it's so good. The freeze frame where it's like Mr. Snake freeze frame, and then just like all the freaking the percussion, and it's like it's like half spy, but it's really more thief, gentleman thief of the 70s. I love that stuff. And this hit it right in the spot for me. So please, I'm very happy that this movie is doing well financially, because it felt like this was going to be a bomb from the lack of cultural talk. But
yeah,
it's made its money back in spades. $80 million on the high end for a budget, $245 for a profit. So
that's a win. That's a dub.
Yeah, that's definitely a dub. And I'm like you guys,
and it's great, and it's great too. That's the thing that makes me the happiest.
We're post-pandemic. This is a brand new original thing. It's not based on anything compared to some of the other animated films we had coming out to theaters. For them to make that amount of money compared to something like, and I'm not trying to beat this movie down even more, but Lightyear, yeah, it's a dub.
Oh, it is. It absolutely is. What say you, Joe? Send us home on the bad guys.
Dom, what was your rating? Did you give it or?
I 3.5.
3.5. I didn't hear you. Yeah, man. I mean, it felt good to see an animated film that the animators really loved doing, and the director really loved seeing it be animated. I had a great time with this movie. You guys loved it more than me, just based on rating alone. In terms of complaints, because I know I had to step out of the room real quick. The third act to me, I just wasn't vibing with it. I just kind of was like, we're hitting that typical third act like stuff of it. But like other than that, I mean, yeah, this movie's a great time. If you need to entertain your kids or whatever, or you actually want to sit down and watch something with them, you turn this on. If you just want them to go and be distracted for 2 hours, that you can put on a Minions movie, but actually sit down and watch this one with your kids. Yeah, this is three out of 4 stars for me. I haven't checked out the Sea Beast, which was another one that people were recommending me over Netflix.
Oh, the one on Netflix.
The one on Netflix, yeah, because I was asking a few friends of what's been like on streaming lately that people are watching. But when I saw this was on Peacock for free, I was like, I think this will be fun to review because I didn't get to see it, but I remember reading Steve's review and he gave it 3.5, and I was like, okay, I gotta check this thing out. But yeah, great film overall. 3 out of 4 stars for me.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. Good stuff. Glad we got to double back and see that because I messaged you guys and a couple other people.
I remember, yeah.
Yeah, because a couple of people I know who also have AMC stubs, I messaged them. I said, like, make time for this one. This one's fun, and I want to see this do well. You know, I was happy. And the friends that did take me up on it, you guys and a couple others, they were like, yeah, it was a really good time. So I'm glad it's doing well, and now it's on Peacock, too, and it's still in theaters. So that's a big win for DreamWorks. We're going to pivot because one of our close friends, if she's actually watching, she's probably like, Jesus Christ, these jagoffs go on, and they bury me at the end. You know, she's like, man, oh man. She's like, no wonder I don't watch this regularly. But we got to give our flowers to a mutual friend of ours, Grace Blackford, because she dropped her debut album. And it's available on Apple Music, Spotify. Those are the 2 major ones I know. I know it's available pretty much wherever you can consume music. I know those are the 2 big heavy hitters. I'm an Apple Music guy myself. I don't know about you 2 gentlemen. But Inside My Head is the name of the album. It's on, again, all the respective streaming platforms. This is a mutual friend of ours from college, and I love seeing people shine. I love seeing people that I know shine and can release their creative passion or release their creativity through their passions, through different outlets, and to see this come out and materialize. I remember when she dropped her EP a couple of years ago, and now she's finally got a 10-track album, which is worth listening to. It's a half an hour long. It's a very quick listen, but it demands a re-listen. A couple of the songs that I think are the highlights on it, just off of what I've listened to, Melt, and I like Future with You too. Yeah, those are probably my top 2 at the moment. I still got to give it one more play. But it's been a very big treat to listen to, and it's very cool. Like I said, I love seeing successful, gifted people do well. I think if the world was more fair, if the world was fair, period, you would see creative people shine and at least get their outlet and get rewarded with how hardworking they are. And to see that happen with Grace, somebody I know is accomplished and a beautiful vocalist too, like, that is awesome. So it's a tip of the hat to her. And she is more, Dom, you knew her first. You were friends with her before me. And she has had a greater hand in this show than I think that even she realizes, because without her, there's no you. I would have likely never met you had it not been for Grace.
I am also wondering if we'll tell the story in just a few seconds, but I do wonder, would you have even joined the radio station?
I was mulling it over, but okay. I don't know if I would have actually, like, I've said this before, I have to worry about it for like several weeks before I make a move. Yeah. And it was you coupled with, and I won't go into this story here, it was you coupled with John Leinenkugel, one of the founding brothers of the Leinenkugel brewery. I kid you not, were who pushed me to go to radio. That's a story for another day. But no, like, you were absolutely the nudge in the right direction, and it wouldn't have happened with our good friend Grace Blackford over here.
Yeah, do we want to tell the quick story?
Well, we told it on Wonk. We did tell it on Wonk.
All right, but I guess
from your perspective's funnier.
Oh, well, my perspective is that Grace reached out. So we had been friends for a couple of years already because we met in vocal jazz. We were both in the jazz school over at Central. But she reached out to me and was like, hey, can you like join me for this coffee date with someone? Just like sit somewhere else, but like keep eyes on me just because I don't know, like, is he gonna like propose to me? Because he's so outspoken. He's so, this and that.
This was one of the very popular Steve Pulaski pseudo dates.
Well, honestly though, I forget exactly the words that she used. I remember she said, specifically, I quote, "I'm worried he's gonna like propose to me or something," which is funny, but also I think is a testament to how outspoken you are, Steve, how much of a bleeding heart everything you are, which is a positive. That's a compliment, you know. And it makes sense that you're a film critic. And
I'm trying to remember what class we had together. Where like we talked in passing in class.
Yeah.
Like I know we've had a couple classes together. I can't remember exactly what class it was. I wish I could. But yeah, that's exactly how we met. And to me, the most oblivious person in the room over here, I thought it was a chance encounter. I thought it was just, oh, there's my friend Dom who happens to be at this coffee shop. There's my friend Dom, you know, and then we hit it off.
It's great. She just melted away. Shout out to the second track. The album. She just melted away and he just turned into us. There was no one else in the room.
Got low. It was just me and you. It was like Miss Snake and Wolf and the bad guys.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, she's a big part of the origin story of Sleepless with Steve and obviously my long-standing friendship with you. But I put the link to, I edited the description of this live stream to include the link of at least the Apple Music version of the album. It's called Inside My Head by Grace Blackford. Again, real beautiful soul music. Maybe I'm just tired of hearing Adele every hour on the radio station that I work at, but Grace might have next over here. She might have next over here. I was really impressed with this record through and through. Great album cover too, I must say. Really good album cover as well too.
Do you know who shot the pictures?
Who?
Same guy who did your headshots.
Really?
Yeah, shout out to Jacob Perry.
Shout out to Jacob Perry, man. I still use those headshots too. He's good.
You should, because they're good headshots.
I still have the folder with all this. Okay, so that explains it. Jacob Perry did those. All right. Shout out to Jacob, man. He does fantastic work. You know, I'm not as photogenic as Grace though, so mine didn't turn out nearly as well. But yeah, 10-track album on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you consume music, you can find it. Again, worth a listen, half an hour, really good. Again, my two favorites are Melt and Future with You. I think the whole album is beautiful though, and it's paced very well too. One of the underrated parts of an album is like track listing placement and track placement, and this one has it for sure.
It's really chill, but it has a lot of depth once you like go past, like, say, oh, okay, I can vibe with this. And then when you actually start listening to it and listen to some of the ballads, like, oh, okay, there's some really good, deeper meaning here. My favorite song by her actually isn't even on this debut album. It's on her EP. It's Home? Darkness. That is a banger. That gets me hype. And I love that song, Darkness.
You know, I'm just remembering too. I remember a couple songs from this EP when it got released. The problem was I remember back, it was like right when I graduated and I was moving. So like I missed it. I did miss it at the time. I'm gonna have to go back to that one too. So you'll be getting a lot of spins on, I don't know how the analytics work on Apple Music and these streaming services, but you're gonna be getting a lot of spins. And if they're locationally, the person in Dubuque, Iowa is me, Grace. If they're locationally relevant as well. But yeah, Inside My Head, links in the description of this video. Check it out. Support fledgling indie artists, because she's got a good one here. She's got a really good record here, and I'm glad that we could talk about it, at least for a few minutes on the show. Give her her flowers, as I keep saying, is the appropriate term. That's going to wrap our show for today. We are back next week, and we're reviewing Where the Crawdads Sing. Is that correct? The one that's coming out this week? I'm pretty sure that's on the schedule. It's Where the Crawdads Sing.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Which is, you know, it's just such an interesting title too, and like I guess it's based off a best-selling book, but I don't really believe that. I didn't hear of this thing until it was confirmed that Taylor Swift did a song for it or something. I think Taylor Swift just summoned this out of air. I never heard of the book, but I'm pretty sure Taylor Swift made this relevant, you know. But I'm seeing it tomorrow. You guys will check it out this weekend, I presume, and we'll reconvene next Wednesday to talk about Where the Crawdads Sing. Where do the Crawdads sing? Your guess is as good as mine. Hopefully we get an answer to that question, or that statement. But that's been our show. Joe Viso, Dominic Guanzon, myself, all rested from vacation. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, live on YouTube. It's Sleepless with Steve.